Well, get ready for a 2018, 2019, or 2021 style postgame show as the Eagles lose at Lincoln Financial Field 20-10 to the New Orleans Saints. This is Locked On Eagles postgame show coming up next.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome into the postgame show. I'm Louie DiBiase, and he's Gino Camilleri. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your own football franchise? Then this game is definitely for you. Download the game. Head over to ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the App Store. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDON in the game. The Eagles fall 20-10 at Lincoln Financial Field to the New Orleans Saints. It's their first losing streak of the season, and man, could it not come at a worse time. The Eagles just needed one win over their final three games to clinch the number one seed in the NFC and an NFC East division championship and raise another banner at the Link. Well, it's going to be do or die time week 18 because they could not get it done last week against Dallas, and they couldn't get it done this week against New Orleans. And Gino, the fact that this team was 13-1, even with the injuries. And again, they lose Josh Sweat today, maybe for the season with a neck injury. The injuries are hurting them for sure. The worst timing you could imagine. But at the same time, you had no business losing this game today. The fact that you were 13-1 and you just needed one win to get the number one seed locked up and the division. And you're heading into this final week where the Giants could be resting their starters and you can't because you couldn't get the job done. Again, it feels like a 2018, 2019, 2021 style of sweat it out the final game of the year. And it felt like we didn't have to do that all year. And the fact that you have to, even with these circumstances, just unbelievable. I mean, this could be an epic collapse where you need instead of two home playoff wins to get to the Super Bowl, you could need 3 road wins.
So for our listeners that are listening through audio, both Lou and I are wearing Super Bowl 52 memorabilia right now. Lou has the warm-up jacket. I have a nice hoodie that shows that they overcame all of the adversity, all of the odds, all of the injuries, controlled what they could control in that season. And that's the vibes I wanted to put out today. I woke up, I said, man, let's have some fun with this game.
Beautiful day in Philly. I mean,
exactly.
60 degrees and sunny. Yeah.
It's Darius Slay's birthday. There's good vibes going around the team. And man, oh man, was that one of the worst performances we've ever seen from any Philadelphia Eagles team ever to walk into Lincoln Financial Field. It was so mind-boggling that they didn't have a clear game plan and that they were just going to, almost in a Chip Kelly-esque fashion, believe that it's scheme over just your guys that go out there and win. And it felt like Gardner Minshew was put into a role today where he was supposed to be Jalen Hurts when in no world is he Jalen Hurts. And they didn't make it easy for him, not giving him easy timing routes, no mesh concepts, no guys going in motion to just get free releases. They didn't run the ball with Miles Sanders, who was going for over 5 yards a carry.
Yep.
And the defense in the first half, they allowed just about everything in terms of the passing game, and nothing went right until the second half, where if you're going to give out any positives from this game, the defensive line stepped up. Devontae Smith stepped up in some big spots. Your offensive line stepped up when it needed to. But the guys at the top, the leadership, Lou, the coaching staff, after that game last week, it should have known that this game was do or die. You couldn't say, oh, well, we'll just wait till next week when Jalen comes back. Well, next week being the Giants game, after that, there is no next week. And now you are in the worst case scenario because you couldn't do what the team in 2017, which this team aspires to be, did in that late run in December and January, Lou, like that team in 2018 and 19 did. They had to go on the road and win 4 games. They had to win 4 games, those teams, the 18 and 19 teams, to get into the playoffs. That 2017 team had to win 1 game down the stretch after that Rams game to solidify the number 1 seed. all of those teams were able to find a way to do that, and they got into the playoffs. Yeah, the Eagles got into the playoffs. Well, whip-de-doo. There's bigger aspirations.
Considering where they were, Gino, yeah, they
Exactly.
were 13-1. And again, it looked like a shoo-in that the playoffs were going to run through the link. And while it still very likely will, the Giants probably going to rest their starters next week. Jalen Hurts probably will return. The fact that, again, we can't just enjoy next week, have Jalen Hurts rest and get that shoulder even stronger, have everybody get healthier and have 2 weeks off. We can't do that. Now we have to sweat this thing out and feel like, again, it's 2018 or 2019 where nothing can just come easy. And I love that you brought up the coaching staff because, again, there were a lot of injuries to this team. And that's why I think the coaching staff failed even more because their game plan was, like you said, as if Jalen Hurts was the quarterback and not Gardner Minshew, as if it was Avonte Maddox in the slot and not Josiah Scott, as if Josh Sweat did not get hurt, as if their cornerbacks on the outside are Nolan Carroll and Bradley Fletcher. It was unbelievable, and it was too little too late in that second half. Obviously, an incredible performance from the pass rush, 7 sacks. 5 weeks in a row now, they've had at least 6 sacks. It's the longest streak of all time. Brandon Graham gets 11 sacks on the year. Hassan Riddick's at 16. Fletcher Cox at 7. Hargrave at 11. I wish we could really highlight that more, but the first half game plan on both sides gave them a 13-point deficit. And in the second half, the defense goes off, but the offense just could not get out of their own way. 6 penalties and another costly turnover. Down 3, a pick 6 from Marshawn Lattimore. They beat themselves today. And, I don't really want to give the Saints credit, to be honest with you. I think the Eagles should have won that game by a lot, even with the injuries. It's not an excuse.
I believe you have to give the Saints credit because they did the one thing that a team that maybe not are up to that caliber of, let's say, a top team like Dallas that you lost against, but what Washington did to you a couple weeks ago where you might be an undermanned unit and you had to do 3 things to win this football game. You had to control time of possession, which they started out right away.
That's a good point. Yeah, the Eagles should have done what the Saints did, basically.
Exactly. They should have replicated that game plan, but the Saints executed it to a T. They come out there, dominate time of possession. Why were they able to get to stay on the field rather in that game? Because they set themselves up with 3rd and 4th down short situations where the Saints today rather, they started out 5 for 5. They go 4 of 5 on 3rd down. They convert that 4th down and short. They put the ball in the end zone. Yeah, you can't blame the defense too much, but situationally up front, that shouldn't have been the result that you had.
In the first half, Gino, I mean, did they adjust and they played more man coverage in the second half and they gave the offense opportunity after opportunity, but and they only allowed 13 points that normally should get the job done. But when you use context and you look at how long Gannon took to adjust and how often there was wide open receivers in that first half with soft zone coverage, it'd be 3rd and 4 and Juwan James would go untouched over the middle. Hassan Riddick somehow is lined up on Chris Olave. Just like last week, this offense only has one legitimate weapon, and you somehow still find a way to not have Darius Slay and James Bradbury on that guy. And mismatches continued because you did not get out of your own way with your scheme, and you didn't adjust based on the opponent you had and the personnel you had and what wasn't working. And it was too little too late where you have a backup quarterback and you can't be down 13, even if it's 13-0. Regardless, a 13-point deficit is a 13-point deficit, and the defense had to be better earlier. And then the offense failed them because they had to overcompensate. And with Minshew, they can't do it without Hurts.
The overall story is, Lou, is that they can't walk into a game and go through the motions and expect to win football games.
It felt like that's what they were doing, man.
That was the result, Lou. Look at guys like A.J. Brown, even on that Marshawn Lattimore.
Yeah, that route was horrible.
Running a terrible slant route.
I thought it was Jalen Reagor out there walking into that route.
Yeah, I thought it was Quez Watkins again. I thought they were going back to Quez on that same route.
And Gardner Minshew's got to see that and know Lattimore is winning that battle clearly before the ball comes out. But at the same time, A.J. Brown, just an unbelievable lazy mistake.
I mean, Jason Kelce taking a false start and all of these
6
little
offensive
things
penalties
that shot themselves in the foot. And we always talk about, do we believe the Eagles can beat anybody in the NFL? Yeah, I still do, even after this result.
They can beat anybody, including themselves.
Yes, exactly, Lou. When they play up to their caliber, they can beat the other 31 teams in the league. But when they play down to the level that they played today and they played to in Dallas with how bad their defense performed in that game, and then the Washington outing with how bad their offense performed. When they play to that caliber, Lou, they beat that 32nd team, which is themselves, which today the Saints did everything that you needed to do to beat a football team of this caliber and allow them to just punch themselves to death. That's what the Eagles did today. They were punching themselves to death where they threw one last haymaker. It was the Marshawn Lattimore pick six, one last drive down the field. You gassed yourself out. You threw everything you had at him, but it was, like you said, too little too late, Lou. You sat with your hands back, played a defensive boxing matchup for the first 6 rounds and said, all right, I got 7 through 12, and you didn't do enough to get the win on the score.
100%. And even when they had an opportunity down just 3, the offense couldn't get out of their own way. I think the first half, both coaching staffs failed epically. Gannon adjusted too late, and the offensive execution just wasn't good enough. And just like that, the Eagles need a win next week to clinch the number 1 seed and the division to get the playoffs to run through the link. I cannot believe there's a scenario. Shame. And again, I'm not going to bet on it to happen. I still believe that at the end of the day, they're going to be division champs and they're going to have the 1 seed. But the fact that there is a scenario next week where you could be going on the road to Tampa Bay in the wild card round is inexcusable, even considering the injuries that have happened. But that's the reality after a 20-10 loss today to New Orleans. We'll continue to recap the game coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles postgame show. He's Gino Camilleri, and I'm Louie DiBiase. Guys, today's show is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, making draft picks, navigating through your franchise, free agency, and the draft, and all the ups and downs of a season, all in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want to, when you want to. We've been having a lockdown league the last few months. It's been really fun. Get your friends involved and your family. Locked On Eagles listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDON. It's all caps, LOCKEDON, in the game store. That's Locked On. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the App Store. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. This is the Locked On Eagles postgame show. I'm Louie DiBiase, and he's Gino Camilleri. The Eagles fall to the New Orleans Saints 20-10. They've lost 2 games in a row. Thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, also subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast and get daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis on the biggest games with NFL key predictions every Friday and Monday. Local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Again, the Eagles lose to the Saints, so they have to get the job done week 18 and beat the Giants, because if not, and the Dallas Cowboys beat the Washington Commanders, who have collapsed as well after starting Carson Wentz, they might be eliminated today, so they might not even have anything to play for against the Cowboys. If the Eagles lose next week and the Cowboys win, the Eagles are going on the road in the wild card round instead of waiting for somebody to come to the link in the divisional round. Inexcusable, but that's the reality they face. And, you know, Gino, I feel like we both agree there were some execution issues today, right? You know, penalties on defense too. The run defense struggled in the first half. The coverage was awful. I think we both agree the coaching staff really let them down. But at the same time, I think you look at the quarterback position, and while Gardner Minshew held his own again for 2 weeks in a row, I think Jalen Hurts really showed his value today. The fact that anybody might have said, you know, Chris Sims and Micah Parsons, that he was a system player and this was the team around him that was propelling him to be an MVP candidate. I think you've seen the last 2 weeks, while yes, this roster gives any quarterback a chance, I think you've seen how valuable Hurts is, just as valuable as basically any quarterback, right? I mean, he gets that quarterback sneak on 4th and 1 that Minshew couldn't get. He doesn't make that throw to A.J. Brown that pretty much ended the game. The offense just looked so much more limited through the air today and on the ground with Minshew. And I guess that's the one silver lining, is it shows you the Eagles truly do have an elite quarterback when he's healthy.
Without a doubt. Our friend over at Locked On 49ers, Brian Peacock, put out the tweet of the decade. Like, does Jalen Hurts win the MVP by not playing these last 2 games?
He was the lead candidate, and these 2 losses have shown more his value. I totally agree with that take.
I think it was evident as ever today, Lou, on the 3rd offensive play today, on the first 3 and out after that 9-minute drive. And
the RPO.
Saying, Yes, and you're reading
Yeah.
Cam Jordan off the edge. We'll walk through it. You have Miles Sanders lined up to the right of Gardner Minshew. Cam Jordan is lined up on that right side in front of Jack Driscoll, who we know is taking the place of Lane Johnson, who is also clear that every time he doesn't play, this team should be concerned because they still only have 3 wins out of now 18 possible matchups that they've had without Lane Johnson in there. So back to the play. They're 3rd and short. Gardner Minshew, he gets the ball. He's reading it with Miles Sanders. They're reading Cam Jordan, and Cam Jordan is an all-pro caliber defensive end who has wrecked games against the Eagles time and time and time again. Well, he did that once again today because Gardner Minshew decided to pull the football, because he thought he could get to the edge. Well, it was clear on that play that Jalen Hurts was not in this football game, and that Jalen Hurts is the engine that
Cam
makes
Jordan
this
didn't
thing
bat
go.
an eye when Gardner
Didn't bat an
Minshew
eye.
pulled that football.
Wasn't scared by it at all. A lot of the things they were trying to do at first by starting with play action on those first couple plays, well, there was no threat of that run to have the quarterback pull it and keep it going outside. So the guys didn't have to keep their eyes to the backfield. They couldn't get anything open downfield. And the front from the Saints played an exceptional game. And Lou, they need Jalen Hurts to play every single game because going back to my analogy of the Formula One car where we said this guy was the driver of the car. No, he isn't the driver of the car, Lou. He is the engine of this thing. They couldn't even field a team today. They couldn't field a competent offense outside of one big play where A.J. Brown got the best of Paulson Adebo. Congratulations on that. Your coaching staff knew that you didn't have your MVP quarterback, knew that you didn't have arguably the best tackle in football. In the first few drives, it seemed like they didn't even care.
I was going to say, it didn't seem like they knew, Gino.
It was so Chip Kelly-esque, Lou. I felt like I was sitting there in the link in 2015 watching the Eagles play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers where on offense, quite literally nothing worked. Chip Kelly is trying to do things with Mark Sanchez that he was doing earlier in the year with Nick Foles. No, you couldn't do that.
Or Sam Bradford in 2015.
Rather.
And it looked like he was doing the same thing with Bradford that he was doing with Michael Vick in 2013. Yeah, I agree. And that's unfortunate because I feel like this Eagles coaching staff, at least on offense, has done a good job over the past 2 years of saying, what personnel do we have out there? What do we do best? And let's adjust. And it felt like, this was Chip Kelly. This was a stubborn coach that just said, this is the scheme and we're not going to change regardless of who our quarterback is, despite it being a very different style of player. And now because of that, or a huge reason, is now Jalen Hurts has to play in this game against the Giants next week, unless you decide to play Minshew again, which, Gino, I can't imagine Jalen Hurts is going to let you do that. You have to. Again, I understand why Minshew played today. You have to prioritize the long-term health of your quarterback. You know, we saw in 2017 what happens in 2018 with Carson Wentz, how these injuries continuously can change a player physically. But this week coming up, no, you cannot afford to go on the road in the first round of the playoffs. You have to get this 1 seed locked up.
And really, you have to control what you can control. And what you can control is that you have a 1-game season. And hopefully your quarterback in Jalen Hurts will be there leading the charge. Because what that does, Lou, even if he has to play, well, then he's going to get an additional week to rest after that. We knew that this could be one of those scenarios. Maybe, I'm trying to look at it glass half full. Maybe, just maybe, it's a blessing in disguise where you get him back. He gets to play 1 game before the playoffs, and that happens to be the last game, and he still gets an additional week to rest his shoulder. Maybe, just maybe, I'm more concerned in the long term with the coaching staff and the lack of adjustments to start the game.
I am too.
And then from the offense to finish out the game. Jonathan Gannon did adjust to the best of his ability at halftime. Things started to get going a little bit for the defense. But the game plan coming in, Lou, it felt like they were just going out there having a good old 7-on-7.
It felt like they took the Dallas tape and said, forget it. This is what we've done the entire season. We don't need to change just because it didn't work in 1 game. That's exactly what it felt like. When I saw Hassan Riddick lined up on Chris Olave, I almost lost it. My computer was almost broken in half because literally last week, that was the one thing that was killing you over and over again. And how you don't learn from that mistake When everybody else is talking about it, everybody else knows. So how does the guy that's being paid millions of dollars to coach this defense that's paid to watch the film, how is he the one that's not noticing or ignoring it?
And the one most concerning thing out of the defense, Lou, I know the defensive line turned it on, and Jonathan Gannon should praise that he has one of the best defensive lines in the history of football.
They're 4 sacks away from tying the all-time record. It's the greatest in the 21st century. It's maybe the second best of all time.
Absolutely could be. And then Darius Slay and what James Bradbury did there in the second half, they were able to help that defense out. But Jonathan Gannon, what he did today, Lou, it reminded me of all of those games early last year where these quarterbacks are going out and completing 85, 90% of their passes. And
his game plan in the first half was like last year when he was playing Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, but it was Andy Dalton throwing to nobody but Chris
and Taysom Hill, dude. Taysom Hill. The one play that drove me nuts, Lou, was towards the end of the game, and Taysom Hill is lined out wide, and Darius Slay is up pressing him, and then they drop him into playing off man, and I'm like, why are we not pressing Taysom Hill? Are we intimidated of a guy who's a special teams player? Yeah. What was the most frustrating, Lou, was that this team is known for their physicality, and the quote I always use is from Jason Kelsey, it's not about who's the toughest, it's who's the toughest the longest. Well, the Eagles were not tough at all today. They got bullied when it came to their offensive line against the Saints defensive line. The Eagles offensive line turned it around, or the defensive line turned it around when that coverage started to get there. But the Saints set the temperature of that room. They were the thermostat. They were the ones who came into your building in a game that you figured was a must-win scenario. They just ran all over you. They did anything they wanted in the pass game. When Alvin Kamara had to get it going and running it, him and Taysom Hill, the way that they do, oh man, the frustrating thing towards the end of the game too, there's one where Marcus Epps is holding on to Taysom Hill, and one of the corners, I think it might have been Slade, like comes and he fails to wrap up, and Taysom Hill just keeps going, and it's like, why are we quitting on plays? And it didn't feel like they wanted to even be there today. It felt like they'd rather be
and the one guy that
doing other things.
The one guy that felt like was actually bringing a physical presence on the inside barely got on the football field, because yet again for like another month and a half, Jordan Davis, despite looking like an elite player before he got injured, and now they signed Linval Joseph, who's been good in the second half of the season, but feels like ever since Jordan Davis came back and Joseph's been on the roster, Davis hasn't been able to get on the field. And today, it's another adjustment that wasn't made until it was too late, was you're getting run on, and the defensive line was great rushing the quarterback all game, but they were getting moved against the run in that first half, and Jordan Davis was nowhere to be found. He was never on the field. And then the first time he actually got a defensive snap, he made a stop the first play he was out there. It was hysterical.
They got outcoached by Dennis
certainly
Allen and company,
which is embarrassing.
It quite literally is embarrassing to even say that out loud, and to know what was at stake, even beyond just the playoffs, Lou, knowing that this could really put to bed the Saints and help out getting a draft pick. I know the guys on the field don't really care about that, but that's a big thing to consider as well. The NFL is a game of inches, and it's a game of margins. That's a thing where you just lost in the margins. You just lost because that pick might fall 2 spots. It might go from 10 to 12 because of that game. And ultimately, it comes down to getting home field advantage. There's one game, one opponent that you have to focus on. It is the New York Giants. Yep. I do think it is fitting, Lou, that they clinched in a manner where they had 48 points. They just blew that team out of the water, and they might have to do it again against the same opponent to clinch that 1 seed, man. It's just not a situation I thought they would ever be in.
I completely agree. I would say that about the 2018 or 2019 Eagles, or 2020, 2021, but this version of the Birds felt like we were just going to have a relaxing last few weeks, and it's been far from it. We'll continue to get into this loss against the Saints coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. Today's episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat but don't want all of the fat and calories? Then you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know a lot of our goals to eat a little healthier this year. If you're like me, where you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, then man, we've got just a thing for you. You got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious. You won't think they're good for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolution in 2023. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're actually covered still in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievably delicious flavors like churro. I love peanut butter brownie and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And even when it's better tasting, they're still healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box by ordering online at Built.com. Now you can also get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. We thank so much Built Bar for sponsoring Locked On Eagles today. I'm Louie DiBiase. He's Gino Camilleri. This is the Locked On Eagles postgame show. The Eagles lose 20-10 to the New Orleans Saints, who I don't know if this was a real tweet. It sounded like it was true from one of the reporters that the Saints yet again were playing dreams and nightmares in the locker room.
No.
If they were, that's so lame, considering I think they got eliminated today anyway, even with that win, because the Buccaneers won, if I'm not mistaken. So New Orleans, congratulations,
that's like
I guess.
With a girl after you graduated college that you dated in high school. Like, that was
it's
5 years ago.
lame.
Let's relax.
Yeah, let's get over that for sure. But the Saints will be at home. But they did make things more difficult for the Eagles, who now have to get a win week 18 to clinch the number 1 seed and the division. Jalen Hurts probably now going to play in this football game. Gino, I think the Giants, because they got the win today and clinched the playoffs, I don't know. I would imagine, right, they would rest their starters unless they want to. I don't know how seeding would work, but I don't even think they could. Maybe they could lose the 6th
I don't think
seed,
they can because they have the tie. So a team would have more losses than them.
So I don't think they have anything to play for.
No, they don't. And I would be hard pressed to believe that they wouldn't rest their starters. And even
unless
if
they're trying to play spoiler for the Eagles,
which there really should be no reason for that because it doesn't affect who they would play regardless. If it had an effect on who they would play in that first round, I would say so. I think Washington definitely has more to play for going up against the Cowboys. They could definitely play spoiler to them. I don't
if the Packers and if the Packers lose today, Washington still would have a chance at the playoffs, but they would need Green Bay to lose today.
Yeah, and even if so, you're going to want to play spoiler regardless. I mean, even if you have a chance for the playoffs or not. But you want to put it in your own hands, Lou. It's going to come down to Jalen Hurts and that defense once again, and we know it's going to come down to this week, and it usually does for this team, man. And I know you said it in the beginning of the show, and you always say it, like, we don't want to sweat things out, but we always have. We have sweat this team out for God knows how long now, going back to that 2008 playoff run where quite literally everything had to go right for you to get in the wild card seed. You had to have 2 teams beat winning games where they were underdogs, and then you had to go and beat the Cowboys just to get in that game, and you go on this run to the NFC Championship, and we sweated out 2018 and 19, and you sweated out 2017 trying to get the 1 seed. It's just what we do. Maybe it's good luck. Maybe they needed a sweat. Maybe they needed a nice schwitz before they get into the playoffs. They sweated it out.
Gino,
they're so
toxic relationship that they got you to think this way. You're like,
I know.
Maybe I deserve
I know.
this.
If you followed me
the
on
justification
Twitter today,
you have right now.
if you followed me on Twitter during that game, I was tweeting through it, man. We were struggling. That was rough.
Yeah.
It is a toxic relationship that we keep coming back to because we believe, Lou, like I said, I believe that they can beat any team on their best day when they played their best football. And that's why I haven't given up on this team. And it's a prove me wrong type of team. And there are some areas where I'm saying, okay, they've proved me wrong, where I thought that they could step up situationally on defense in some spots and that their coaches would put them in a better situation to win when they had some injuries. That's not going in the best step, but they do have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson coming back soon, hopefully, and Jalen Hurts coming back soon as well. And you would expect them to improve on offense with the quarterback coming back, and Lane Johnson should be back for the playoffs. And the defense hopefully cannot get any worse situationally than they have been in the last 2 weeks. You're hoping everything that went right in the first 85% of the season can go right for just 5% longer. And you're so close to getting it done. Just finish what you started. That's what it should be. Finish what we started. Finish that fight and then take a week off. worry about that game. Let the 6 teams fight it out. You don't have to go on the road and potentially take on Tampa Bay. You could sit at home, watch the playoffs play out. But we're sitting here once again, Lou, and we're sweating. We got a towel on our head hoping this thing doesn't get too out of hand, and we're just dripping through our clothes at the end of next week.
Maybe the silver lining here is that you can still lock up the 1 seed next week, and maybe they needed this little wake-up call for the playoffs, and the coaching staff needs to be like, hey, we have to do better at adjusting our game plan, because when it comes time to play better teams like the San Francisco 49ers and, maybe the Dallas Cowboys again, and if you get to the Super Bowl and you got to play a Buffalo Bills or a Cincinnati Bengals or a Kansas City Chiefs, you have to be able to adjust. You can't keep coming in with the same game plan. And when it's working, yes, you don't change things, but it hasn't been working the past few weeks, and it's why you're in this hole on top of the injuries as well. Prayers go out to Josh Sweat. Let's really hope that that injury isn't serious. He got carted off. I mean, it looked serious after a neck injury. He did have feeling in all his extremities at the hospital, so I can't imagine they're going to have him back anytime soon, and that's a big loss. But at the same time, this team is deep enough on both sides of the ball to rally this thing, and like you said, there's guys coming back healthy. Outside of Sweat and Maddox, you're still pretty much going to be at full strength heading into the playoffs. So there's really no excuses, and they got to get this thing done next week. We'll keep you covered all week right here on Locked On Eagles. I'm sure you guys will be sweating it out with us as well. Subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms, on YouTube as well, and on Twitter. Hit us up at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase LOE, and at GC24_football. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, also make sure your second listen is the Locked On Sports Today podcast with Peter Bukowski, who goes around the world of sports in under 30 minutes, giving you the take of the day. Local experts like Gino and I also giving you coverage, all that and more wherever you get your podcasts. As always, thank you for downloading Locked On Eagles. Thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.